guys, welcome back to the channel ByMWu. I'm ByMWu, aka Marianne, and in today's video we have episode 21 of the knitting podcast that we host here. It's a little space on the internet where we talk about crafty things, primarily knitting, and it's a pretty traditional podcast episode today. We're going to talk about finished objects, which granted I have two that are like kind of weird finished objects. I'm not sure if I would for sure define them as that, but we're going to talk about that anyways. I have a couple new cast-ons, some works in progress, and just some other like random misc things that are not knitting related per se, but like knitting adjacent. Long story short, I hurt myself and I was trying to find a way to bandage my finger for like knitting purposes, and I'll talk about what I learned about that if you're curious. And yeah, so if that sounds like your cup of tea, grab something fun to work on and let's get started. As usual, we'll talk about what I'm wearing really quickly. This is my Lily Frill blouse by Kremke, also known as Masami on Instagram. And this is a blouse that I knit for her as a test knit back in November of 2023. So it's a little over a year old now. And I'll be honest, when I applied and knitted up during that time, I wasn't sure how much I would actually wear it because it's a little bit more like fancy, but I actually wear it a ton. It's super comfortable, it's super warm. I think it's really cute. You can probably see here, but it features a lovely like frill all over like a V-neck section. This section in the middle is a little sheer. It's the Mohair held single, the rest of it is Mohair held double, and actually underneath the frill there's like a little bit of yarn overs that you can't really see because the frill is blocking it. Excuse me, don't know if I'm losing my voice, but yeah, I adore this. I love the color. This one was knit in Drops Kid Silk Mohair, I think is what it's called, in the color North Sea, which I believe is number 37. It's this beautiful like greeny blue. I've referenced it in the past, but it reminds me of blue spruce pine trees, which I love, and I think that color is gorgeous. It's a relatively cheap mohair. Like mohair is all expensive, but it like leans, at least when I bought it, like closer to the $10 per skein, which I've seen mohairs go up to like $15, $20. So on the more affordable side, all things considering, but I really like it. It's really flowy, it's really comfortable, it's really warm, it's great for cold days, and I think it's just really cute. I will note, if you guys compare my version with the original like sample, you'll notice that my frill is like way more aggressive. I think I read something in the pattern wrong at the time. I never went back and checked, but her frill is like a lot looser, whereas mine's like more frilly, if that makes sense. And then I will just quickly mention that this is not technically a size inclusive pattern. I applied and knit this before I was prioritizing like size inclusive patterns and just being more aware about that. So yeah, if you are interested and are in the larger bust size, unfortunately it might not cover you all the way, and I apologize about that, but I just thought I would throw that out there just to be transparent because that's the truth. It I think only goes, I have it written here, to 139 centimeters, and that's with 8 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. So not quite at that 165-ish centimeters / 60-inch bust. But yeah, this is the Lily Frill blouse. I really do adore it. It is a little unfortunate that it doesn't hit all of the sizes, but I did make it, so I'm going to continue to wear it. But yeah, just keeping that in mind. Let's jump into finished objects. I have one for sure finished one and then two kind of finished ones. It's a little bit of a long story. We'll talk about that, but we'll talk about the for sure finished one first. This one was a whip in my last episode, and I was talking about how I wanted to get it done for the new year because I could wear it for New Year's Eve because I thought it was really cute. Spoilers, did not finish it. I finished it like the second week of January, but it's still really cute and I still love it. This is the Silvester Tee. I think it's so cute. Honestly, holding it up like this isn't doing it justice, so I'll insert like a photo of me wearing it. But this is a contiguous fingering weight, sparkly, flowy shirt that was designed by Anna. I don't remember her last name, but she is known as Cupid Knits on Instagram, and it is the most adorable New Year's Eve shirt that I think I've ever seen. It features really sparkly yarn, as you can probably see there, and I was fortunate enough to test knit this for her, and while I didn't hit the New Year's Eve goal, I think it's just the most adorable, like, you want to wear something sparkly kind of shirt. So yeah. As I mentioned, it's contiguous construction. It has a little bit of this like mock neck design. This key features is obviously the yarn and the like kind of flowy sleeves. So they're kind of like triangular shape, but when you wear them, they're super flowy and fun. And they start a little bit further in on the shoulder. So it like is this really beautiful, voluminous bell shape. It's gorgeous. And this was an amazing test knit. I don't think there were really that many comments back to Anna. She did a great job in terms of like writing that up. The original version is made in, I think it's called like Merino 220, and she holds it with Stellaris, like sparkly yarn. I think all of that's from like Kremke wools. I'm probably saying that wrong. My version is made in Sandnes Garn Sunday, held with the Stellaris because that's the sparkly component, and it's black held with black gold, and I think it's adorable. I will say knitting this up on black yarn was my very first time doing so, and it's hard on the eyes. I guess like you can't as easily see the stitches. It gets really like hard, but it's mostly stockinette. It's mostly in the round, minus a little bit of short row shaping in the back neckline at the very beginning. It's pretty much all in the round, so it's relatively seamless, all things considering, and I think it's so cute. Overall, like I said, this was a super straightforward knit. It took me a while because I was prioritizing some other things, / it is fingering weight at the end of the day, but it is totally worth it. I think it's really fun. There's minimum like construction confusion because it's basically knit in the round. Even the frill like increasing part is like all done in the round. You very minimally have to do like a lot of knitting when you pick up the sleeves, if I recall correctly. The edges are all like I-cord, so there's not a lot of ribbing. I mean, there's not any ribbing, and even the folded collar is all stockinette. So it's just like overall, it's such an easy knit, and it's a pretty fun knit if you choose like a color that you like with some sparkles. I think there's a lot of great colors out there, and there's a lot of endless combinations. My only comment about this is that I personally find the neckline a little too high. Despite adding short rows, I personally think I would have preferred a little bit more. It's just quite high up, and I think because there's a lot of fabric around the neck, I do get a little bit of bunching. It doesn't affect the way it wears, but it definitely is something that I am noticing, and you can probably see like there is some short row, but it's not like super aggressive. I think it's probably maybe about an inch or so, and I think I usually like a little bit more in mine. But overall, I think it's a really cute shirt. I'm so sorry that it doesn't look super good like this. Like black does not show up on camera very well, but this in the sunlight, it just glimmers and sparkles, and it's so fun. And actually, on my last podcast episode, a viewer told me that Silvester means New Year's Eve in German, which I thought was so cute. I'm sure that's like super intuitive to someone who knows German, but as someone who doesn't, I thought Silvester was just a cute name. But like to know that it means New Year's Eve is just like the cherry on top. Like I think it's such a cute name. I think it's such a cute garment. I think you could really customize this in terms of depending on the colors that you picked for a different occasion. Like I honestly think a red one with like red gold sparkle would be really pretty for like Lunar New Year or even Valentine's Day. And while I don't think I probably will make one, I definitely think about it because that would be so fun to have. And when I applied for this and I told my sister about it, she basically went out and bought the Stellaris in anticipation for the pattern release, which, by the way, the pattern is released as of filming today, which is February 2nd. So by the time I post this, it will be live if you are curious and want to knit yourself one. So highly recommend this. Overall, like adore. I can't wait to wear it next year for New Year's Eve. That is my plan. I think it will be fun to wear like also at Christmas parties. And yeah, I think a red one would be really fun. Speaking of Lunar New Year, that segues me perfectly into my next finished object. Okay, for full transparency, this is not an 100% finished object. It is technically finished, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep it. So I might frog it, which then means it's not finished. Like I haven't woven in the ends, but I have blocked it and I have like finished the actual knitting part. So it's sitting in this weird like flux period, but I'm gonna include it in the finished object section because in my mind, I'm like done with it. I just need to figure out what I want to do with it. Does that make sense? We're keeping it here anyways. This is something that I casted on between the last episode and this episode. It actually only took me about like 2 weeks to make, and it is a Tolsta Tank that is so bad to show because it's a vest. And this one is a heavily inspired vest from the one that Rebecca Clow had made. She had made one in the same color and in the same design. Can you tell that I really like the way her brain thinks, and I really like the stuff that she makes because this is the second thing that I've basically copied. The first one being the stickless season sweater without the like sticks in that beautiful pickle green color. Anyways, I specifically made this for Lunar New Year, which was about a week ago or a little less than a week ago, because I was inspired by another Rebecca, also known as Hip Knit Hooray on Instagram and YouTube, because she was making a Lunar New Year garment. She did, I think, a cardigan, or is making a cardigan. I don't think she finished in time, but I saw that and I was like, I want to make a red something for Lunar New Year because I don't really have red clothing. And this is what I casted on. And I had finished it in time, but yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. Hence why I'm like not sure what I want to do. I will insert some photos of me wearing it / it like flat laid because this is not giving you a true representation of what it looks like. But it's basically a mashup of the different components of the Tolsta Tank. If you're not familiar with that pattern, that is a Rebecca Clow pattern that she released last summer. And it is kind of like a 6 pattern in one, mostly a 3 pattern in one, but she gives you like DK weight and fingering weight options. And it's basically 3 versions of a tank top. She has a square neck version, a V-neck version, and then what she calls like a vest. But in my opinion, that's like the traditional, like kind of closer to your collar, like round neck version. This vest is a mashup of the V-neck one and the collared like U-neck one smushed together, but not knit in the round, and it gives you kind of this vest shape. You can kind of see it if I can show you here, because this front panel is like a V-neck. This is brutally bad. Maybe I should put it on. Give me 1 second. As you can see here, it's kind of like a V-neck in the front, and then there's like a scoop neck in the back. My version has I-cord all around. I think Rebecca's, or Rebecca Clow's, because there's 2 Rebeccas in this situation. Her original version has like ribbing on the bottom. I just did I-cord along the edge too. It has this really cute like I-cord bow tie. And overall, I like it. The fit doesn't really fit, in my opinion. I'm gonna stand up a little further. Okay, hopefully that works a little bit better as like a wide angle. But so as you can see, it's fairly oversized. I did size up and I made the size 2, which I should have technically made the size 1. I was thinking maybe that I wanted a little bit more of an oversized look, which is not the problem. I think the length is the problem. I don't like knitting bottom up. This is a bottom up garment. This is the second time that I've made this mistake where I've made the body too long and I have a harder time adjusting it. I overall like the shape of it. I think just like if it would be shorter, it'd be cuter, in my opinion. I don't know. I've been mulling about this for the last week. The moment I casted it off, I was like, I don't know about this. I wanted to frog it like basically immediately, but I had posted on Instagram trying to get the community's thoughts. And I was getting like mixed reactions in the sense that a lot of people were like, it's cute, I think it's good, but ultimately like do what you need to do to make it something that you want to wear. And I'm undecided. Now, I'm gonna sit back down. Now, I recognize there are some things I can do. I could leave it as is, which maybe might be okay. Like the more I wear it, it's like fine. Like at the end of the day, it's not like obnoxiously weird in any way that like I wouldn't be able to wear it out. Like sure, it's a little bit bigger. I think that this V-neck should come up a little bit personally. Like I think that would be a little bit cuter. But at the end of the day, if I did leave it as is, it probably would be fine. The other thing that I could do that could be like the middle ground is to make it shorter. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is already bottom up, so it is a little harder in my mind. I think I could do some like garment surgery and like cut out a piece and then graft them together. My only thing is it because I did I-cord, how do you do that with I-cord? Because it logically makes a lot of sense to me to cut and graft when a sweater is knit in the round. I've never done it personally, but it makes sense in my head where like you pick up stitches before and after, you cut it out in between, and then you seam them together using, is it called grafter stitch? I know it's traditionally called Kitchener's, but I think people aren't using the word Kitchener as much. I think it's called the grafting stitch. Anyways, Kitchener stitch, but we're not gonna call it Kitchener stitch. I don't remember the name. But yeah, I don't know how to do it with I-cord. The last thing, which is probably a little dramatic, but maybe the direction that I'm leaning in, is to frog it completely. It feels the simplest, even though it probably is the most amount of work. And I just feel like for something that I think I would just wear it more if it's like exactly what I actually wanted, which would be slightly smaller and slightly shorter. And maybe even I would try to like make the pattern in reverse. So like knit it top down, because yeah, this is the second time I've done a bottom up issue, both of them vests. And it's the second time I've made the body too long. And I think I get too anxious about it being short and not being able to change it. And I don't really take into the account about like row gauge, because that's not something I usually care about too much. Like I think like stitch gauge is usually a little bit more important, and it's bit me in the bum twice. So yeah, let me know what you think. I forced myself to wait until the podcast so I could talk to you guys about the situation, hear your thoughts, because you guys are very helpful and have helped me in a pinch in a lot of other times. And so curious to know what you think. This is why all of the ends are still like left, because if I am going to frog it all, it will be easier to frog without the ends woven in. I think it's really cute. It was a relatively fast knit. You probably saw while I was wearing it, I have a bunch of stitch markers. It basically marked the start of every day that I worked on it. And that means I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was like an 8-day project, something like that. So it was a pretty fun knit. All things considering, I really do want to have like this beautiful red garment and this like really cute tie vest style. So like it's something that I do want. And I personally am leaning towards frogging and just making it right. I guess I should also mention what yarn I use. This is Knitting for Olive Merino held double and held with a strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the color Pomegranate for both, and it's glorious. It definitely shows up more red on camera. It's a little bit more orange toned in real life. I actually think this is more like a persimmon. Is that what they're called? I know the fruit name in Chinese, which is like a sizi, but like I think they're called persimmons. Persimmons? I think Persimmon. Oh, I was wrong. Okay. Anyways, I think this is more of a persimmon color. I know some of them are a little bit more orange, but like if you have like a red persimmon, it sounds weird, that word. Anyways, I really like it. I think it's a great yarn combination. I love the color. This is so soft. Like it's really squishy. And can you believe that this is my first time doing Knitting for Olive Merino held with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair? Like given that I love Knitting for Olive Merino and I've used both yarns separately in different projects a ton, you'd think I would have combined them together, but I never have, and I really like this. It's really squishy, it's really soft, I love the color. They have a great selection of colors. I will rave about Knitting for Olive for forever. Now that Lunar New Year is actually over, I don't feel as like pressured to get this done. Also, I will be honest, I didn't actually wear it for Lunar New Year because it didn't have the ends woven in. I did put it on and like thought about wearing it, but I was like, is it a little too crazy to like kind of wear a blatantly unfinished object? So I didn't end up wearing it out, but I did wear it around the house. Now that Lunar New Year is over, I don't feel the pressure to like get this done anytime soon, but it is something that I think I would like to make into its full potential, because I think it would be something that I would like a lot, and I'm just not really gravitating towards it right now. Honestly, I might regret wearing this. It's really warm in this room, but I think it's cute, so we're gonna suffer through the heat. The next project I don't have anymore because it has kind of a funny story. This is the Sille Slipover by Petite Knit. This is the second time I'm making it. I'm making it in the exact same yarn, which is Sandnes Garn Perfect, which is a superwash DK yarn, and I changed the color. My very original version that I made, I want to say the end of 2023, was in this like gray beige color. I don't remember the name of it, but the current one that I ended up making, I ended up going like a brownish red color. Also don't remember the name of them. Sandnes Garn, I find their yarns interesting because they have names, but they're only really ever referred to as like numbers, which is confusing. But anyways, my point is that this is my second time remaking it, because if you guys have been following the podcast for a while, you'll know that the original version I made, I actually finished it up in like the fall winter time of 2023, but my dad ended up taking it because he borrowed it one day because he forgot to wear a sweater and he was a little cold, and the vest was relatively oversized on me, so I thought he would fit it, and it was too short, but like it fit him like width-wise. So he borrowed it, ended up liking it, and ended up keeping it, but then realized it was too short, so then he gave it to my mom. So my mom now has it, but then I was like, I want it. I actually really liked that vest when I wore it like the one time to take photos. I'm like really hitting this plant, I'm sorry. So I've been thinking about it, and I was like, I have the pattern. As much as I try not to make as much petite knit anymore because I just think there are so many other designers that I kind of like enjoy, I was like, I have this pattern. I know that the yarn works well. It's like a relatively fun knit because it's pretty straightforward. It has some like pearl bump detailing and as a pattern, but it's like not too difficult. And so I cast it on, and I didn't need to think about it because I didn't have to make a swatch because I had a pre-existing swatch of the same yarn for the same pattern. So I just cast it on and started working on it. Now, between the last episode and this episode, I was working on this project, and I was making this like comment to my mother about like, oh, does dad want it? Like, cause he stole my last one last time. And she was like, you know what? Yeah, he does. So I don't have it anymore because my dad has it. Now, the funny thing is this is a finished object officially now, but it wasn't really a finished object from my perspective because I was working on it. I had, I think, 6 skeins of the yarn because I bought it for my size. So we had the dilemma of the situation where the vest, once I finished with it and used up all my yarn, was still too short. So it turned into like a knitting relay where my mom found a yarn that was of similar thickness and similar color. It wasn't super wash, but like, honestly, I think it was like a pretty good match, all things considering. And so she was like, I'll just finish it up and then give it to your dad. I'll insert a photo of the status or the length of it when I had it and passed it to my mom. My mom then added some more knitting to it. She did the ribbing and blocked it. So I will also add the photo of her like version of it. I asked for a finished photo because I was like, I need to show the podcast. I don't know, what's the coincidence that my mom happened to have a yarn that was basically the same thickness, and basically the same color? Very odd. But anyways, that is the story of the Sille Slipover. And I think this is a sign. I have now made 3 vests, 4, I guess if you count the original Sille Slipover. I've made the original Sille Slipover, I've made the universal vest, I've made the Tolsta Tank vest, Lunar New Year one that I just showed you, and then I've made the second Sille Slipover, none of which have been perfect. So maybe vests are just not a thing for me. Maybe I just have very bad luck with them. So I think I'm gonna hold off on making another Sille Slipover anytime soon. Like both my mom and my dad at this point have one. The only other person that would probably immediately steal one would be my sister. She's not really a vest wearer in my opinion. But I think for sanity's sake and just like protecting my vest, I'm not gonna make one for myself. We're just gonna let that ship sail because I don't think owning a Sille Slipover was meant to be from my perspective. But it's a really fun knit. I do recommend it if you are interested in the vest. I think it is a really beautiful vest. Like I said, it has like a little bit of a pattern repeat on it, but it's relatively simple because it's just made through pearl bumps. And it has a 2x2 collar. I think it's a really nice vest overall. Let me know in the comments below if you would define the Lunar New Year vest and the Sille Slipover as finished objects, because I don't know, there's a part of me that doesn't think they are, but I included them as finished objects anyways because this is my podcast and I apparently run the show and that's how my brain is working. Those are all my finished objects. Let's move into whips. I think all of my whips are basically new cast-ons that you guys haven't seen before, at least on the YouTube channel. The first one I have here was one that I mentioned. I actually don't remember if I said which pattern I was gonna do, but I definitely talked about the yarn because it was a Christmas yarn. And that is this Cardiff Cashmere project. A little bit of a recap. I got some of this beautiful gray Cardiff Cashmere for Christmas. I got a sweater's quantity. This one's in the color 519, which is like, I think it's called Fumo. Probably saying that wrong. It's like a dark gray. And my decision at the time was I wanted to make a very classic looking sweater that I could wear long term. Not that like a fancy sweater wouldn't be fun, but I definitely wanted to go a route of this was expensive yarn. I'm gonna spend a decent amount of time knitting it. I want it to be something that is just like classic that I know will work, like kind of like stupid proof or at least Marianne anxiety proof. So I decided to cast on the Elisabeth Blouse. Oop, I'm gonna lose that yarn. I'm very early on and I have now since put this on hold because I'm working on a test knit that I'll show you guys very shortly. But this is what I have right now. I have the double folded collar, which was a very interesting construction. I've never done that before in the sense that you start with a provisional cast on and then you knit, like it's a 2-layered collar. I think it looks really clean in my opinion. And I had just started working on like this backside before like putting it on hold. This is knit on 4mm needles. The Elisabeth Blouse is a petite knit pattern. I know I just mentioned earlier that I'm not working on her as much, but given that I wanted a tried and tested, very classic sweater, this is like the only one that I found that really fit that vision. And I trust petite knit at the end of the day. There's a lot of project pages on Ravelry who has reviews and talks about like things that went wrong or went right or whatever the fit construction. So I picked her pattern because I knew I was gonna get a garment that I was like envisioning. It's basically a pullover. I think it's raglan construction with a really nice folded collar, generally knit top down. This is what it's looking like right now. Oh my gosh, guys, this yarn is so luscious. Like knitting in cashmere makes me want to knit everything in cashmere, but I don't have the budget for that, unfortunately. But yeah, this is beautiful. I definitely don't think this will be my last cashmere garment ever, but oh, glorious. Glorious. I definitely am not a little scarf person, but I can see why people make little scarves with cashmere. I guess it's the most cost-effective way to like get cashmere into your wardrobe without investing an arm and a leg. But yeah, I don't have much to share. This is at the collar construction right now. It would be like this. A lot going on up here. I think this dark gray is gonna be a beautiful pullover. I'm really excited for it. I will just do a quick shout out to the bobby pins doing all the work here. Can you see that? I have a bobby pin holding these stitches because I can't find my stitch holders. And it like dawned upon me that I was like, you know what, bobby pins would be like great for like a small amount of stitches. This has about 12, so I think it's working gloriously. It's like relatively tight, so I'm not too worried about them falling off. They're like really small and don't really get in the way of the knitting, and I'm just really thrilled with this so far. So yeah, excited to come back to this project, but it has not been worked on too heavily recently. I cast it on because I wanted to cast something new on, and I had this beautiful yarn that I wanted to use, but then I got accepted to a test knit, so I was like, I'll go work on that right now. More from a monogamous perspective, like I still work on other projects, but like primarily that's my main one. So this will be coming back shortly after that test knit is wrapped up. I think it's so soft. Oh, cashmere is so wonderful. Are people allergic to cashmere? I'm sure there are. That's so unfortunate. But it's such a beautiful yarn. Cashmere is interesting because I find that this yarn's so soft that it's borderline very slippery, like almost hard to work with. I primarily use bamboo needles, and I can't imagine knitting this on metal ones because I think it would just like slide off too much. They're really slippery even on the bamboo, which is more friction than metal needles. And then I also find that like the elasticity of cashmere like a lot higher. I don't know if the camera will catch this, but if I like show this to you and I like, can you see the like way it stretches? I feel like it's like a lot more bouncy. That's probably because of like the airiness in it. which doesn't make it hard to tension, but I do find I have to tension differently. Let me know if that's a me thing. It doesn't take away from the knitting experience, but I have noticed that knitting on cashmere is different than like knitting with merino, in my personal opinion. But yeah, that is the Elisabeth Blouse. I don't know if I will show it again on the podcast anytime soon, but it definitely is one project that I'm excited to come back to eventually. Let's move on to the next work in progress. This is the chest knit that I've been talking about. I'm really excited about this one. I am so excited about this chest knit because I have been dreaming about this sweater since I saw the first like teasing photo about it, I think summertime last year. And while I wasn't necessarily gung-ho about doing the test knit, I definitely knew I wanted to make this sweater once it came out. It just so happened that I was in a good headspace and applied and got accepted. But this is the Matcha Jumper. Now, the Matcha Jumper is the newest pattern that Inês, also known as Verknit on Instagram, is designing. She is the same designer of the Milady's dress that I did the test knit for last year, and I had a great time. I love her designing elements and her garments. They're always really thought out and honestly very like refined. Is that the right word? I just feel like they're so classic. And while the actual garments themselves technically are relatively simple, she has just like put a lot of thought into the little details that make it feel really like elevated and elegant. So this is a sweater that looks like this right now. I'm making a brown version. She's called it the Matcha Jumper because her original sample is in a beautiful matcha green color, and it's this super cute, cozy, kind of a middle ground between like contiguous and saddle shoulder shaping, in my opinion, or like construction. And it's just a stockinette with like beautiful, long, not cinched sleeves, and it's just glorious. I am making a hojicha version. So if you guys don't know what hojicha is, it's actually roasted matcha. I learned about it when I went to Japan, and it's basically matcha leaves, but they roast them to make them a little bit nuttier and sweeter. And I do find that it's less bitter, and it's like a brown leaf after the roasted process. And so she called it her Matcha Jumper, and I was like, it reminded me of hojicha. And so I was like, you know what? I want like a brown one. So I am making this brown version, and I've been calling it my hojicha jumper, which I think is really fun. There's this running joke in the test knit group that we should just make all the colors of tea. Like I think a really beautiful like orangey red kind of matching like black teas or like orange pekoe would be really cute, or if you do a really light green. Anyways, I think the options are endless, but yeah, this is my version. This one is knit in Knitting for Olive Merino, held with Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair in the color Bark. It's kind of like an ashy cool tone brown. I will say I wish it was like slightly more warmer tone, but also I think depending on like what kind of hojicha you look at, it can be a little bit more cooler, and then some of them can be a little bit more redder. It depends on how they roast it. But I'm really excited to have this brown sweater. I think it's so cute. Like I was saying earlier, the constructions, I don't know how to place it. It kind of has like saddle shoulder vibes where it has like a panel on top of the saddle, or sorry, on top of the shoulder. And it has a little bit of like raglan construction and contiguous construction because you're increasing at the saddle shouldered areas, but it doesn't have the traditional raglan like lines that come out from the collar, and it doesn't have, in my opinion, the traditional like saddle like block. It just like has kind of like that inspired look. The chest knit's been going really smoothly so far. It's a lot of stockinette. I have officially joined in the round, so it's just stockinette until the bottom minus 4 pearls around underneath the arm holes, because just like a little fun extra detail. And it features kind of like a mock neck collar and 2x2 twisted rib, and so it just is very clean looking. I made my version on, I want to say 4mm needles. The stitch gauge for this one was like 22 stitches per 10 centimeters, and I think Inês is a tight knitter because her original like recommended needle size was 3.5, which is really small in my opinion, but yeah, I had to size up. But yeah, really enjoying how this looks. I think it's so cute. I think it will look so much better once the collar is put on, which My goal is to finish up the current balls of yarn that I'm using. I'm about like halfway for whatever body, do the collar, do the sleeves, and then finish the body off. And then she'll be done. And I'm really excited. If I love how the way it fits the way I think I will, I think I might make a second one in like a green color. Maybe not necessarily matcha colored, but like a darker green. Not sure. Just thinking about that. Lots of plans. But yeah, I love this. I want to note though, I kind of did something different when I was swatching for this pattern. I kind of had a lot of knitting for all of both the soft silk mohair and the merino from past projects. And while I was waiting to start this one, I was like swatching with my older yarn, and I was doing a lot of like different color combinations just for fun. One, because why not? They're like kind of low risk as a swatch. And then two, just to use up some yarn. And I am obsessed with marled looks right now. So these are the 3 swatches that I made. This first one here, the main color is marzipan. So the merinos and marzipan. And then I used dusty artichoke mohair. And it's this really pale, like off-white with like a really light green. I think that's really cute. I then made another version with dusty aqua in the merino, and then also the dusty artichoke for the soft silk mohair. And it makes this really fun like green blue color. I don't know, something about marled yarn right now is just so much fun to me. It's like visual interest with stockinette, like what's not to love. And then this last one I did was marzipan for the merino held with the pea shoots mohair, which I really like this one. This one's really fun to have this like lighter main color with the darker contrasting color as the mohair. But yeah, I'm really into kind of this because I think it's easier for me to kind of pinpoint what swatch is what. Sometimes when I do multiple swatches for a pattern, they all look the same and they're all slightly different because of gauges, because you're using different needle sizes, but it's really hard to tell the difference. Whereas this one, I'd be like, oh, in my Ravelry page, I labeled like the swatch made with the marzipan merino and the pea shoots mohair is done on X millimeter needles versus the one on this one is done on Y millimeter needles, and it keeps it straight in my head a little bit more. I do think in the future I want to start incorporating like needle size on the swatch so that I can actually look at it from a glance instead of having to refer to my notes. Someone in the Test Knit group does that with Pro Bumps, and I thought that was really interesting. I think she mentioned that she took that idea from like the Swatch-tastic pattern or like tip guide from Tin Can Knit, so I'll look into that. But yeah, really loving this. I think it's a fun way to look at different colors. I might not necessarily ever knit a garment in like this kind of combination, but it's making me really excited about marled looks, and I definitely think I want to incorporate that in the future. But I think it's just also a fun way to incorporate like different yarn. I don't know, I had a lot of fun with this, so I just thought I would tell you guys about that because maybe you're interested. Last but not least, this test knit is going until March. So I believe the pattern should be coming out relatively shortly after that. So if you're interested, it might not be great for the summertime because it is a mohair sweater, but definitely a garment that I think will be a staple in a lot of people's closets, including mine. After the whole like drop shoulder situation and not really liking that construction, I've been really looking into other kind of a little bit more shoulder defining constructions, and this one's been a fun one. The contiguous on the Silvester Tee has been fun. I am doing raglan again. Actually, that petite knit Elisabeth Blouse is the first raglan that I've done in probably like a year's time. I hadn't done a lot of raglans towards the end of 2024, and I do really like the construction, and it's a pretty straightforward knit. It's reminding me of my early days of knitting because it was the first construction that I did, and it was the only sweater construction that I did for like a couple sweaters before I branched out. I'm looking at my sweaters right now. I'm pretty sure all of them were all raglans up until like the stickless season sweater, which was towards like the latter half or like the middle of 2024. So yeah, raglans has been like a core of what I've done. I branched out a little bit towards the end of last year. I'm thinking I do actually really like contiguous and some other like styles that I can't even really describe. They're kind of like a combination of ones, but yeah, drop shoulder is not one that's been hitting the spot. And you know that circular yoke has my heart. So actually, I forgot about that. I did a lot of raglans, then I switched over to a lot of circular yokes, and then it was like circular / drop shoulder, and now I'm like just trying to make whatever, and it's like a good variety in my opinion. Okay, we're wrapping up quickly here because I've been talking for a very long time, it feels like. Very last project that's a whip is a Musselburgh. I'm gonna be really fast on this one because I probably sound like a broken record. I went to Toronto last weekend, and it's not a trip for me unless I cast on a Musselburgh because I just like having them on hand. I've talked about this in the past, but I love just being able to carry them around. They're such a small project because it uses one skein of fingering weight yarn. You need like one pair of needles. Once you do the crown, you basically are just knitting in the round for a very long time, and I just find it's the best travel buddy in my opinion. So I am making this beautiful teal blue one. It's got some tweedy on it. I'm still in the crown section. Honestly, I was a little ambitious casting this on for Toronto. We were in Toronto for like 4 days. Like, this was not necessary, but it's nice to have it on the go now. This is in the Hello Stella's winter palette in her merino tweed base, and it's in the color blue gray. This is a looser spun yarn, very similar to the spin structure of the solstice fingering that I used in my Strange Brew Tailor's version sweater. I think this will last a little longer and not pill as much because it is superwash merino and it does have nylon in it because it's a sock yarn. But I'm really liking this color. It probably won't show up on the podcast until this project's actually done, because after you do increasing from the crown, like I said, it's just stockinette for ages in the round until you do the decreasing. For those of you who don't know the Musselburgh, it's a beautiful double layered hat designed by Yolanda Teague. This one will be my 6th one, so I've made 6 of them. I love it. It's a great pattern. It's a very common pattern, like it's really popular, so I won't talk about it too much. But yeah, that is the last whip that I have. Just thought I would share that with you guys, given that it is a project that I'm working on. But yeah, I won't talk about it too much because it's the 6th repeat of a pattern, and if that is not a testament of how much I love that pattern, then I don't know what is. That is all of the project related stuff. The very last thing that I want to talk about, and feel free to skip this section if you're not interested, is about band-aids. This is like not knitting related, but it's like knitting adjacent because it affects how I knit. And long story short, on Tuesday or Wednesday this week, I sliced my finger, not open, but I sliced it pretty deeply while cutting a bagel in the morning, and it was bleeding a lot, and I had to find a band-aid to put it on. And I went through this whole thing on Instagram. If you guys are curious and ever want to feel like behind the scenes stuff, go follow me there. But I basically was complaining about how I don't know why like fingertip band-aids don't exist. Fingertips are so important, not only from a knitting perspective, but just from a daily life perspective, that I feel like we should have band-aids that fit them better. I did get a couple comments that people were like, oh, there are finger band-aids, and I think a lot of the ones are like for band-aids like when they're on like the finger area as opposed to the fingertip. The fingertip is the worst because it's like rounded, odd shaped, it's sometimes in weird areas, but they're like very high usage situation. I am no longer wearing band-aids. The cut is healed enough that it's not like lifting as much, but for the first couple days I was wearing a band-aid on it because I wanted to knit and I didn't want it to get caught in my yarn, or like, you know when you like have a cut and it like gets caught and stuff and it like kind of reopens and it's just like uncomfortable and it gives me like the heebie-jeebies. But I tried a whole bunch of band-aids. I tried cutting them into different shapes. I was trying to be cognizant about like not putting the sticky stuff straight on, because then when you're taking your band-aid off, it's ripping it open. Anyways, long story short, I have found the magic of surgical tape, and I will like praise it to the end of time, specifically for fingertip band-aiding, because it's just amazing. This is not sponsored, even though I'm like, sponsor me 3M, because I love this. But I had surgical tape in the like first aid closet, and I was like, you know what, let's try it, because surgical tape is one of those interesting things that it's like kind of fabricy. It's sticky, but it's not like sticky. Sometimes I find band-aids like too sticky, you know what I mean? You can cut it into different shapes. It's a lot more malleable. I found that it works perfectly for specifically what I wanted, which was to protect the fingertip, not necessarily like provide like any bleeding absorption or protection, but it was more so just to like keep the fingertip away from the elements so that it could heal a little bit better. And so yeah, I highly recommend this. They're relatively affordable, I think. This is called Micropore. I don't know if this is probably branded. It's from 3M. I'm sure there's a lot of different type of surgical tape. I will let you know that it's probably my new favorite thing. I like cutting like a square of it and then putting it over the top of the finger, cutting 2 edges and then folding them in so you're kind of creating like a dome shape. And then I cut a long strip of this surgical tape and I wrap it around the finger to seal everything in. And it has worked amazingly. Also, extra bonus, it actually, at least this one that I'm using, is still like allows for touchscreen action. I guess it still allows for like some sort of electrical signal between like your finger and the screen, so that I can still use my finger to touchscreen even with the bandaid over it, versus like an actual bandaid, which is just like you lose all control of your finger. So yeah, it allowed me to keep knitting during this time. Otherwise, I would have been out of commission. That's all I have for you guys today. Not a lot of yarn acquisitions on this end. I obviously got the new yarn for my test knit, but I was actually good about that. And I went to a local yarn store, picked up exactly what I wanted, and then went home so I didn't have to pay for shipping. And I just got the, I think it was the 10 skeins, like 5 of the Merino, 5 of the soft silk Mohair. It's been pretty smooth sailing here. My goal is to finish the Matcha Jumper, aka my Hojicha jumper, before going back to the Elisabeth Blouse. Let me know what you guys think I should do with the Tolsta Lunar New Year vest. Very curious to hear what you guys think about that. And I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed the rambly chat. I will catch you guys in the next one.